Okay, I'd like to call this Finance Committee meeting to order. We have assignment for request for council action discussion. We have 13-182 budget commission amounts and rates, 13-183 budget amendments, 13-184 expenditure over $15,000 fire physicals, 13-185 deer survey, 13-186 expenditure over $15,000 increased PO for turf grass, 13-187 amending ordinance 213 Emergitech Police, 13-188 fiscal year CHIP 2011 CHIP grant rehab 330 Cardinal Drive, 13-189 fiscal year 2011 CHIP grant rehab at 612 Lafayette Road, 13-190 purchase of 2014 Terraster SFA 4x4 streets, 13-191 bids Cloverdale storm sewer improvement, 13-192 cooperative agreement Ryan Road reconstruction, 13-193 increased PO Assure Vault Cloud Management Council, 13-194 net profits tax Montville Jet agreement, 13-195 payment greater than $3,000 engineering, and 13-196 Parks and Recreation Center Director salary. First item is 12-172 Memorial Park outdoor pool study. Jim, I think this came from your...
It did come from Public Properties. We probably have spent close to a year talking about the pool and what to do once we knew that it wasn't going to be able to open this year. I think the committee felt like that we weren't ready to give up on the pool business, so as much as we appreciate the planning department, building department, who put a lot of information together for us, we think we're at the point where we need some expertise. I think one of the things that came from the committee, we all agreed that within our current budget, we can't afford a pool because it ranges anywhere from $1 million to fix what we have there to $3 to $5 million to do something new, depending on how elaborate you want to get on a water park / pool. But regardless, we had decided that we wanted to continue to look at what our options are, including ways to fund it outside of the current city budget. So the first step is this study that Branstetter Carroll would do for us. I know we have, between the mayor and when Tim was still here, we kind of went back and forth and figured out what we could do internally versus what we needed their expertise for, and I think that we finally got it down to the amount of what we do need some expertise on. And again, I guess I want to stress that one of the things we think we need some expertise on is how we would fund it, because we don't see that it's coming out of the current city budget. So we sent it on to council with a 3-0 vote that we would like to fund this study.
I just had a question. I was unable to attend the public private meeting. Do we have any idea what it would cost to fix the current pool?
I think that was at that $1 million range is what we were.
Where'd that come from? Do we have a report that says that? Is that a number we pulled out of the air, or where does that number?
I think,
Nino's got an
good. I don't have the report. Tim worked with Astros a little bit, and it was on a portion, I think, on a gutter system. So what we've done is talked a little bit with the mayor and Mike Wright, and we're seeking out basically an assessment from pool vendors, actually not a pool vendor, but rehab, the work on pools, reconstruction of the same, and to get a current accurate price of the outdoor pool.
I do though. Do you remember, somewhere in there we were quoted?
A million and a half, and I'm not sure the entire file wasn't there with respect to the.
Well, that's my point. I guess there's no information backing it.
No documents.
But this is one of the things that the study will do. I guess we feel like we've done as much as we could with our internal staff coming up with numbers.
Well, the only question I had on it, reading over this analysis, is the first one, the demographic and market analysis. If I remember correctly, I was just talking about this, every time we do a study, we get this information. So I guess I don't know why we need to tell them the information that we already have, like the demographics of the city. I think we've done that every time we had demographics done. And anything we do, what people make, what's the ethnic configuration, what's their per capita, the income, the population. We already have all that. Thought we did. I mean, because every time we do a study, we get that information. So am I incorrect in that, or is that sounds so familiar? I don't know.
I haven't recently, I mean, I don't remember, not saying it hasn't been done, but I don't remember seeing the current demographics. And I think that this is going to lean towards more of a recreational study / pool study. And again, like we discussed in the committee meeting, we know that we can't fund this out of our funds we have now. so I think we're gonna have to come up with some creative ways, first of all, to find out, do we want the original site, the original, the pool, minus the locker rooms, facilities, or do we want to be more elaborate? And I think that's what the demographics, I think, would show for.
I think we also, with the demographic, it was, if you have a water park feature and a pool, it suddenly attracts from a much bigger area, so, and that drives some of your revenue projections then too. So I think they were also gonna look at the greater Medina area, depending on if we go this way to replace the existing and all we have is a pool, versus adding some of these amenities that other communities have done. And that's one of the things I guess I should mention too. We had Kathy send out across the state to cities that have had to either rebuild or start fresh on a pool. And, most recently, Bowling Green, I mean, their situation mirrored ours exactly, where their original pool was built about the same time. They just this year opened up their new pool. Avon Lake was about to open up. So there are several cities that are going through this exact same process where these pools have kind of outlasted their usefulness, and it was easier to start with a water park.
Well, if we can't, we look at them, do we have to spend $11,000? I mean, they've already done all the work. I guess the question would be, when you're talking about bringing other people in to help pay for it, like users, I would be very cautious, because I was on when we did the study for the rec center, and we were assured by the study that it would pay for itself and have 14 full-time employees. That's what it says in the study. So I guess I'm a little, I don't know, I think we could answer the question about what we want to do. The bigger question is, how are you going to pay for it? And it's going to be up to the public, whether it be a tax increase, an income tax increase, or a levy, and a real property tax increase. That's the two answers. Some of the information, I spoke with the mayor, and he confirmed, I think it's for a year, though. It's about 65 cents per gallon, up to 80 cents per gallon to operate a pool for the whole year.
Right.
So our current pool was 300,000 gallons, so that's, if it's 80 cents, it's $240,000 for the whole year. Divide that, because you only open for 3 months, that's what it would cost, roughly, the same size pool. I don't know if it was the full giant facility that we could be looking at, but, I mean, I don't know, it's a tough decision. I think we have to figure out, and I think the answer is, if we're just gonna redo our current pool, figure out what the exact price is gonna be, that's one option. The next option is the big facility, of what that's gonna cost, and once you determine the cost, the question is going to the voters and asking them. Say, you can have this facility, you gotta pay X amount of dollars increase in your taxes, and see if they'll do it. I don't think we should rely on people coming and paying fees to use the pool, because if I'm doing a study and go to ask somebody to say, hey, would you like to use the pool, we pay $5, I say, sure, I would. And then when it comes to it, I say, I'm not paying it. That's what I'm fearful of. Spending all that money and building something, and then you don't have the money to run it. And my bigger concern is, if we don't have the income tax or real property tax to pay for it, 5 years from now, we're looking at our budgets, and I do not want to be opening a pool and at the same time laying off personnel, because we don't have any money. I don't think that would bode well with the public if we did that. But that's just my 2 cents worth.
Well, and I understand your concerns, and I think, we did discuss this at length. I think it comes up, in my mind, it comes down to, what is it ever gonna be revenue neutral? I mean, the current situation we have, no, obviously not. I think if the community would be willing, and again, I think this study would come back with some interesting ways to pay for it. But the community's gonna have to be involved, and I think that, this study initially started out at 15,000 through the mayor's communication with the company. The things that we can do in-house, we've got it down to 11,000. I think the question is, do you wanna provide this for your community? We're gonna have community input to see if they want it, obviously. But, and I brought up, you look at our park system. We spend an awful lot of money, in our parks, and we've probably got the best parks of any community our size around. I mean, we just added a park. Is it ever gonna be revenue neutral? Probably not. I mean, if you look at what we're actually spending on it out of our income tax and our budget. For me personally, I am willing to go forward with the study to see what they bring back. And I agree with you, we can't do this out of our current budget, and we're gonna have to find out if the community's willing.
I think all three of us, as far as, I don't think any of us have heard somebody come to us and say, we ought to get out of the pool business. As far as judging, I think at one of our meetings, we probably had 10 to 15 people who came in support of the pool too. A wide range of residents and age groups that, encouraged us to not give up on this asset for the city or this option for recreation.
Any other?
I agree with Denny and Jim, and I think we have an obligation. I mean, I want us to have, I want everyone in the community to have access to, to the facilities. And if there is a group of folks that we're not meeting that need now, I think we recognize that. And if we can get the information that we need so that we can try to meet those needs in a responsible way, then I think then the money is well spent in order that we go in the right direction to see if we can do that. I think we need to do the study, and I think we need to then follow up on the study, see if there's support for it, and hopefully, in the end, we'll be able to, to have the facility. Because I think right now, I think we're there are folks whose needs in that area we're not gonna meet. We didn't meet them this summer, and we're not gonna meet them next summer. And I think we have an obligation to do that. And you made a perfect analogy with, the other services that we provide. We provide a lot of services that bring in no revenue whatsoever. And we support them because it's necessary or it's important. We have the largest, I believe we have the largest park system per capita in the state of Ohio.
I don't know the answer.
Yeah, I think
We're all in.
I won't dispute it.
So I support that. I'll support it too. I understand what you're saying, John. It makes a lot of sense, and I'm not a fan of.
Right.
I'm not a fan of bringing in outside people to tell us what we ought to do. But I think in this case, I think we need some guidance, or we might go the wrong way.
I have to support Bill, Denny, and Jim. When we pay this money to have a consultant come in and do the study, they're going to do an analysis of the data and tell us what it is. I understand and appreciate the fact that you want to save some money, John, to do it in-house. I don't know that anybody here has the full expertise to properly compile the data, properly interpret it, and present it to us. I'd hate to have it skewed by our own biases, where a consultant, somebody from outside the house who's smarter than you, allegedly. So they would come in without any
He wasn't
bias.
talking about you personally.
I was us. I was in that category too, Todd. But I think the unbiased opinion of a consultant like that would give us the answer, the right answer, not what we're looking for, but the right answer.
And I will say that internally, we did do quite a bit. I know when Nicole was here, she put a great amount of time into this with the help of Tim and Greg Hannon and Steve. And they did do as much as they could to give us some pretty good information in our first couple of public property meetings. And John, I agree with you. I know it's an expensive proposition. I think the thing, though, again, I go back to how many cities across the state are facing the same issue. And I was surprised how many went ahead and continued to provide the service for its residents. So we're not unique here in struggling with whether to spend this money to live in Ohio. But I would also agree with you, not only do we not have the money to pay for it in the current budget, we got to figure out how to pay for it. We got to figure out how to operate it too.
Well, we do have substitutes, those don't cover all the population with an indoor pool and splash pads, which maybe the other communities don't have. At least we have something, which is helpful.
Well, everybody knows right from the beginning, I've been 100% behind the pool. I think we need it. As Bill said, I think it's that value-added service that I just think our residents expect us to provide. As far as the actual survey, like Paul said, I don't think we have the expertise to figure out some of the things we need to figure out. I normally lean towards your thought, John, that another study, but this one, I don't think we have the expertise to do it ourselves.
I agree. You know, me personally, I think the pool should be something basic, with some new additions added on to it, like a zero depth and some of your basic items. You know, I'm not for spending $3-4 million, but even to get something basic that I would like to see, we still would have to go through this process. And you know, in this proposal, it talks about design, which will still have to get done somehow. I mean, I don't think Pat's gonna be able to do it. You know, I'd like to see us use some of our existing pumps that we have that are still fairly new. And to get all that done, I think we still need to go through the study. The demographics you brought up, I understand where you're coming from. That's just one portion of this whole proposal, and I think the rest of the items in there are important, and hopefully it'll come back saying something that will give us something concrete on how we're gonna handle it and put it in and fund it. But even if I just wanted the basics, we still would have to have something done like this, so I'll support it, even though I'm not fond of studies.
I was just gonna add, if I may, I'm not sure if it convolutes things, but the current pool, if I understand, is 9 feet deep. And these rehab companies, someone had referenced that they can maybe come in at 7-foot depth, have the drain lines between that 9-foot depth and the 7-foot depth, and do some reconfiguring. So I don't know how long that process would take to vet that out, but if that's something to consider, then the zero depth would be added. And these are just some things that they've thrown out in the brief discussions, but no on-site.
But we still would have to go through the process of getting an outside help. Because, I mean, that's what I'm thinking about, is, you know, maybe the pool's not as deep as it is, we fill in a certain area, but add on for the zero depth, and maybe just do something simple to extend out the lawn area, you know, so extend the fences out so people have more room to sit out there. You know, I'm not looking for all the bells and whistles, but I want something that the public can go to in the summertime.
Make a motion, move to approve.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Aye. We got 13182, Budget Commission amounts and rates. Keith?
Thank you, Mr. President. This is something we have to do as part of the budget process each year. You can see we received this from the United County Budget Commission. We have to have it returned, the resolution accepting the amounts and rates by, I believe it's the end of October, it's written on there, October 31st. I do want to point out while we're doing this, just as a reminder, next year when we get into the budget process, I think, I mentioned this before, I think everybody was in favor of it or acceptable to it. I want to rearrange the process a little bit and move the LST fund into the first set of budgets, because the LST renewal or replacement or whatever we end up needing to do, the first opportunity to do that will be November of 2014. So I'd like to get through that one early so we can then decide, are we gonna ask for a renewal, are we gonna ask for a replace and reduce? There's a number of different options. We need to figure out how much money we need first, and then we go back and figure out what we need to ask for. I wanna get that done early enough that we can easily get that onto the ballot for November of 2014.
Questions?
I see that we have to have this over to the auditors by October 31st, so I'll make a motion with the emergency clause.
Second, including emergency clause?
Any further discussion? All in favor with emergency clause?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 13183, budget amendments. We have the finance, 2013-051, MCRC capital improvement plan funds.
This is for the joint operating agreements, capital improvement fund, these are expenditures for capital improvements for the rec center.
Move to approve.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Finance, 2013-049, 189, public square funds for the purchase.
This is for the land we're purchasing.
Yeah, where do we, Mr. Huber, where do we stand in that? Did we have an executed agreement, I assume, and we're going through due diligence now?
This is KeyBank?
Yeah.
Yes, we still have a couple of weeks for contingencies that are open. That hired a couple of independent agencies to examine the property. We should know where we stand with that soon. We paid our initial escrow deposit, and we're on the path to head toward closing.
Okay.
Move to approve.
Second?
Any further discussion or comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 13184, expenditure of $15,000 for firefighter testing.
These are for our annual physicals. We had stopped doing them several years ago, for several different reasons, but we need to get them back online for the guys. This company's actually Dr. Surso's group. This will be baseline for all 40 firefighters, EKG, spirometry, all the required testing. And then they'll also act, should any other conditions come up, situations, as a department physician for us to help answer medical questions. And it is on a prorated scale. After this baseline this year, I believe it's 20 to 26-year-olds get every 4 years, and it's a sliding, so once you hit to 45, we're getting an annual for all the older members.
Question?
Chief, when you say required, who's requiring these physicals?
NFPA has most of the standards, and also state, we have to do the spirometry for the state because of the wearing the mask and all that stuff there. Spirometry is a test of your lung function. We have to do that because they're wearing under OSHA and the, I forget the name of our state division, but they handle that too for the breathing apparatus, so they're required to have that portion.
Okay, thank you.
Chief, did you say these are new requirements? I was wanting to get out why we stopped and why we're back on.
Well, basically, part of it was budgets, and we were getting pretty pricey, and then the vendor we were dealing with at the time, we had no support from them. People had issues, they were sending to the family physician, if that physician signed off, okay, and we kind of got in a pickle on a couple of situations. That's why we want a department, someone's going to represent us and the best of the city, not the individual.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Surso's done the same thing for the police department for years, and we asked him if he'd be willing to take this on as well, and he's agreed. I think he'll do a great job with it.
Move to approve.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. 13-185, a deer survey. Mr. Pacoli?
Yes, sir, thank you. This discussion has been around the block with respect to our ward meetings, as you all are aware. Tim started the discussion, a few companies, and then this request before you is to have that discussion today, whether we want to continue and go with the deer survey, the aerial overview,
What information would this give us?
deer count.
And then once we get the deer count, then what?
That's what I was going to ask you.
That's going to be up to you.
What are your intentions?
Well, I guess the question is, you want to call the herd. I mean, that's the whole reason, we know there's a lot of deer out there.
Correct.
So I don't understand,
Well, you
why would
can't-
we need somebody to tell us
You
there's a
can't
lot
call
of
the
deer?
herd until you have the count, and the state agrees that the amount of deer per your square mile is over what they recommend for.
Well, the first
crop.
question is, everybody willing to call the herd? That's, if we're not willing to do that, why would you go to get a survey?
Well, and then along with that, the state will also, once the count's done, they will recommend how much, if any, thinning is needed.
Necessary.
Necessary.
Correct.
Well,
That's
if thinning is necessary, then the answer is, we're gonna have to call the herd in the city, so. The first question again
Well-
is everybody willing to call the herd?
Well, it's still your choice.
Well, no, that's what I'm asking.
But I
because you
understand
got-
what you're saying. Do you want to spend this if they agree?
You're not
And if
gonna,
you're not going to call it, then you coexist with the deer.
right. But you're gonna have
And
to
when you
kill
go to
some
the
deer.
resident meetings, then that's what we decided.
The bottom
Not
line is.
not you're waiting on the
Same page.
administration to do something with it.
Right, so, I mean, is everybody willing to kill the deer? You gotta make the decision, otherwise why would we spend $12,500 if we're not willing to have somebody go out there and thin the herd?
Well, I can say I am not in favor of killing, I'm not a hunter. But I can also say that over the 10 years that I've been in office, I've probably fielded at least 75 to 100 calls from residents wanting to know what we're gonna do with the deer population.
There's only one thing you can do with them.
Well, I know, I understand.
We got it, John.
So, I mean, I guess the answer is that we gotta get a consensus. If there's 4 of us that are willing to call the herd, then we can go ahead with it. If there's not, then we don't go ahead with it. So, Paul, go ahead, Mark, I guess you're
I'll let
first.
you start, Mark.
Call the herd.
Say you don't want to kill
Well, I
the
have
deer.
some questions too. I mean, and I don't know what the state, and one of my questions might be to the mayor, what the state will allow a municipality to do or not do.
Either call or leave.
That's it.
That's it.
There's no.
Other states let you put out devices to, things for them to eat as a contraceptive.
Right, and that's-
Just like they do for rabies and other things with other species. But the state of Ohio will not, even though we've asked them, the state of Ohio will not use that method. It's either coexist with them or kill them.
And we can't do anything on a home rule basis to put something,
I defer to Mr. Huber, but I think the state of Ohio controls.
I recommend crossbow.
It's interesting what Mr. Huber says, because
Well, the state of Ohio, it's actually, the deer in the city are the state of Ohio's.
right.
So,
well, that's why it's,
And if,
I don't know
Send
that
them
we
to
could,
Columbus.
I don't know that we could pass a rule
If-
to take
if-
the state's
well, I didn't know if
property.
that was an option.
if the state, after the survey comes back and says that we can thin it by X amount, it will be done by crossbow.
By
But
grant.
even though you have a crossbow and you feel that you're trained, I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that you have, the people that you gather to complete that task has to take a state-sponsored crossbow course at the municipality that's thinning the herd's expense,
Just more money.
before you get the permit.
Yeah, we've not researched it to that point.
I mean,
I don't know the answer to that.
I believe that's true, though.
Call means kill.
Yes.
Okay, back to me.
They got that.
Bob had a comment?
Yeah, coming out of Colga County, because I know they're doing all the metro parks up there, and they were doing it with rifle, and it was a very costly proposition. I can't remember exactly, but it was in the, near $100,000 to do what was in Strongsville at the time, in that section.
And
The
that's
other
because-
option, and I'm involved with now, the Medina County Parks, they allow hunters to come in, they limit days, hours, and what you're allowed, like you said, you had to go out and get cleared to do that, and that way the local residents can go out with bow and arrow and clear them that way, and there's no cost to the city at that point.
Well, what's the natural predator of a deer?
Coyote.
Maybe we get a bunch of coyotes.
They're
We already got 'em.
They're already got 'em. But
They're not working fast enough.
I guess I want to know, you know, what the plan, I mean, we're spending, this is a one-time survey, correct? This will be done. Now, how do we know population fluctuation with deer, what time of year we're doing the count? Do we do it again next year to see if the numbers are close, or are we just doing once and we're going off of that? And see,
The state has a formula for that.
Yes.
Yeah, they analyze all that information.
right, and that was how
And-
accurate
And
it is.
they migrate, I'm sure
How
they come
accurate.
in and outside the city all the time.
3 to 5 miles is their.
But also how accurate's the, you know, just the survey itself. That's another thing. I mean, do they look at how many doe versus buck are out there?
I think it's just
Can
number of
they-
deer.
We're just gonna see dots, count them, and make a decision?
Well, they take the dots and count them, to stay with that analogy, and they look at your square miles. And if they say in a square mile, you're allowed this many, and you have 2 or 3 times that, then that's when they come to the analysis. That
Okay.
you have the right to remove some of them, because sooner or later, then, there's not enough food for them to survive, or they're causing damage to properties, which we've all heard about, or both.
Right. And then I guess another question is, we want to spend almost 13,000. Are we doing anything, or we thought about doing anything to maybe put local dollars just towards something that helps deter deer from invading certain areas? I mean, what are we doing to look at other options
Well,
besides?
I asked Mr. Huber a while back to look at, and I have researched on feeding wild animals. You know, a lot of people love the deer, and they feed them. A lot of people love the Canadian geese, and they feed them. From what I've read, you can't just come out and say, I'm gonna pass an ordinance, so you can't feed deer, because it is a problem. There's a lot of people that's feeding deer. The ordinance, if you pass one, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Huber, it would have to be that you cannot feed wild animals. And you can pass the ordinance for that, there's communities that have it. But that means you can't feed birds, and, I mean, you can't limit what you can and cannot feed. And I honestly think that some of our problems in some of our neighborhoods are because residents are promoting and feeding the animals.
And Denny's absolutely right. I visited a few businesses with storm sewer issues, and they have salt licks and mineral blocks for the assisted living and to watch the animals, and that's happening regularly.
So back to the $1,000,000 question, no, I'm not excited about going out and killing deer. I think our community, we sit right on the edge of farmland. Another concern I have is, let's say we do come out and thin, who's not to say more deer from the outskirts are gonna move in and the deer-headed disease that's been on, you hunt, I mean, the deer-headed disease that came over the last
Lyme disease.
something where that they were noticing large populations decreasing in deer, but,
Both of my dogs have Lyme disease.
well, I don't know if it's, I don't think it's, I thought it
It's
was
like
something.
chronic waste.
It's called borderline disease,
It's the ticks.
It hasn't been up north.
and it's more prevalent up there. We don't see it that much down here. If I could just add maybe a little synopsis of the birds and bees according to deer. Doe comes into estrus. Here in Ohio, peak is around the second week of November. If she's not serviced that first time, 28 days later, she comes in estrus again. If she doesn't get serviced that time, 28 more days, and she gets an opportunity to have little babies again. That means if you're going to use a means to limit reproduction, you would have to inoculate every doe 3 times per season. The state of Ohio tried to do that in a enclosed 65-acre park near Columbus somewhere about 10, 12 years ago. And they were absolutely unsuccessful in doing it. And that was an enclosed, fenced-in park. We have an open area. It's never going to happen. It's never proven to be an effective means to limiting deer population. To be honest with you, there's only one way to do it, and it's lead poisoning.
That's what we're talking about.
And we will be getting deer coming in. If we limit the area and limit the population in the city, yes, they will come in from the outskirts because it's a matriarchal system. The does gather in large groups. When they produce yearlings, they're pushed out of their groups. They come seeking more area to be able to raise their fawns. That's why today you see deer in places like Medina, but even more so, we used to live in Brook Park, and there was never a deer in Brook Park. Now they have a burgeoning population just there from coming in from the metro parks. So they will produce. This is going to be an ongoing thing because we don't have natural predators or enough natural predators. And then speaking to Denny's question about that, yes, you have to, other communities have done where they've opened it up to bow hunters. With that, yes, they do have a state test that you may or may not enforce that your hunters would have to take. But it's a responsible, low-risk avenue of limiting the herd and culling. As opposed to, I don't think you want to open up firearms to every citizen in the city. I don't think the chief would like that.
So right now, I'm not ready to spend $12,500.
Paul?
No, I have to say that any resident who spoke to me about the deer problem was asking when we can get rid of it and how we can get rid of them. I think the crossbows is a responsible way of doing it because this way the person shooting the deer can use the meat in some way, shape, or form. So it's not like the deer is going to be going to waste, where if we allow them to continue on, they eventually will die of starvation because I will put up a fence big enough around my garden so they can't get in. I had to put some sort of fencing over my grapes. I have a 6-foot fence around my garden, and they're still getting in. So.
Maybe it's the construction of the fence.
So what's your answer?
Let me think. I'm for it.
Okay. Danny?
Again, I'm not a hunter. The only thing that I've actually ever killed is a spider. And believe it or not, there's times, and I know everybody says I'm a bleeding heart liberal, there's times that I've actually felt bad about killing a spider, not real bad. In saying that, I have had numerous, and I live down in, close to Reagan Park, so, our deer population is quite large. And again, numerous calls over my tenure, and even though I'm not a hunter myself, and I voted on a few different legislative areas that I've not personally supported, but because of the residents asking for it, I will support. And all I heard.
Can support calling the herd.
Yes. Well, no. Well, a couple of things. One thing is actually a longer-term way to deal with it. I shared this with Tim, I think, about a year ago, is a lot of communities that are in areas where there are larger animals have worked to create their park systems in a way, and I was mentioning to somebody before the meeting that that marshland that was just bought, that large piece of property that was just bought connects with other parkland, and they call them large animal corridors. And what it does is it creates sort of like when you talk about a green belt for people in parks, it creates large animal corridors, because if there's a corridor of green space that is not populated, that doesn't have humans in it, animals will tend to go through those corridors. And if you connect larger parks, it's predominantly used by states out west where there's bigger areas, and they don't want the animals to come into town, but it is fairly effective. And I think it's a quandary for me, because we don't even kill spiders. I mean, I have
Trying to make me feel worse.
I know. We carry the spiders outside. But if you look at the deer population, as Paul pointed out, I mean, they don't belong here in the numbers they're here, and the reason they're here in the numbers is because they have no predator. The only predator they appear to have within the city limits is an automobile, which is not good. And so coupled with that is, it's not a comfortable thing for people for the neighborhoods, because you have a lot of issues other than people hitting a deer with their car that can happen. But it seems to me, and it happened at the ward meeting that we had, and I mentioned to Mark, I think I didn't want to get into his meeting at the ward, but whenever we talk about animals that seem to bother us, we always end up using words that deal with violence. We talk about killing them, we talk about shooting them, we talk about doing all these things to them, instead of looking at maybe a longer term way to deal with the issue. Is this the most predominant issue that we have? I don't know. I've lived here for 40 years and I've never hit a deer in my life, because I drive pretty slow at night. I don't want to hit a deer. If the deer eat the stuff out of my yard, and I guess they're so hungry this year they ate the tomatoes, I don't really care, because I can go to Bueller's and buy more tomatoes. It absolutely is not my issue. I have a really big piece of property in North Carolina, and there is a lot of deer there. And they never, ever eat a thing in the area that I consider my yard. And the reason is because they have a huge habitat, and there are bears, and there are wolves, and there are coyotes, and it's a balance. And we don't have a balance here. There's a lot of us, and they don't want to be here, they don't belong here. And it's tough. And like I said, to me, it's a quandary, because I would like to I know what residents, I understand that issue, and I don't want anybody to get hurt or hit one. But on the other hand, personally, for me, no, there's no way I would ever be able to support that.
Well, it seems like we're able to support it, but I don't know if I can support a study until I know the final cost, because if we do the study, then the next question is, how much is it gonna cost to call a herd? And I don't know why we should vote on the study until we know that answer, because if it costs $100,000, maybe my answer would be different, because why would we spend $100,000 to thin a herd out? So maybe, can we get that answer? Is there a way to figure out, if we get the permission to call our herd, what is the estimated cost from other communities to call the herds? I mean,
Well, I think it depends on how many you need to call, and I don't know that you can do that before the study.
well, I mean, you could get a number, like if you have to call, we could take a guesstimate, I guess, if we have 200 deer, what is that? I mean, other communities have done it, what's the number per deer, so we get a figure in our head of doing, you already know the number?
Between $600 and $800 if you.
A deer.
If you bring in a team or a company that's licensed, There are contractors that come in and shoot them with firearms. It's between $600 and $800.
A deer.
Yes.
And
And then they-
But that's a different approach than letting residents go through a safety course and limiting the type of weapons they use and some of these other things.
Will we have to pay for that safety
That's
course?
Sharpshooters, though, numbers coming in like white.
And how much
does that safety course
Buffalo,
cost?
That was just because that's a cost we could get, because that would be a fixed cost, wouldn't it?
Right, yeah, we could determine that.
Yeah,
And
we
I,
could get
again,
that.
I don't know if it's the hunter paying for it or the community.
The county parks is doing it now, so they might have an idea, because they're having local hunters do it for them, so they might have a.
Well, unless anybody's eager to vote on it tonight, I
Yes,
think we get that answer.
Right, I agree with you, let's get that number first.
I would not be in favor I would be in favor of, if we go forward with this, the process with the crossbow, not firing weapons in the city.
Well, I don't know if we get an exemption from that. I mean,
Yeah, we have
Yeah,
an
as long as we
existing
stay with the
ordinance.
crossbow,
so we have an existing ordinance that
We do
prohibits
in
it.
archery.
Yeah, as long as we stay with the crossbow.
Well, can we get that answer then? I mean, from the parks perspective of what what they're doing and the costs associated with it? I mean, I don't want to vote on something, and the next thing you know.
No, that's fine,
it's
that's fine, as
quadrupled.
long as we know that there's support, once we get
Yeah.
some more numbers. The other thing, is can we pass on the cost of the class to the person taking the class, as opposed to the city getting stuck with that too?
Because there may be some people
If
who
they're
like to
walking
sit
away
in the
with
woods
deer,
all summer, all winter, all
class.
fall long and get a deer, they can come to the city and get one day.
And the other question, a quick question, if they came in and they used crossbows, could that carcass be used for feeding Medina County? Can we donate that?
I don't know
Well,
what
I imagine
specifically.
some of these hunters are gonna want the deer.
Right.
Well, if we're paying $800 per deer to hire,
Well, that
That's
was.
not
a different group. They're hiring a
different
group of sharpshooters
Oh, okay,
with
I see what you're
weapons
saying.
and do.
Okay.
So we can see if it's possible, if the state's okay, if one of the culling methods is that you can have this safety course where they use bows or crossbows, compound bows, crossbows, and then they keep the meat.
And there's also probably still a limit per hunter what they can shoot, right? I mean, they're not gonna be
Right,
exempt
the
from.
state is still gonna have processes, because they're gonna make them permit each one, so they can keep track of how many are.
So that's only 4 per person. That's what he said, I don't know how many was. That's
Well,
four.
that's dependent on the county, again.
For antlerless.
It's dependent on the county.
Getting rid of that.
Right, I mean, each person can shoot 4.
Pardon?
For the state.
The state only allows you to shoot 4 deer a year.
You're saying regular hunter out.
Yes,
California,
regular hunter,
yes.
but this could be a nuisance permit like farmers get. They could say you're allowed to take X number out. They
Oh,
give
you
a
can get
special
more than
permit.
that.
Yeah, issue to the city, and you guys can distribute it.
We will inquire.
You might be able to answer Denny's question, it might be possible to tell the hunters they get 1, 2, whatever each, and then if they want 2 more, we take them for FMC or whatever, we're gonna
Right.
do that way.
Maybe it won't
Necessarily
cost
be
as much.
possible.
Well, I can't answer for feeding Medina County, because generally they accept meat that's been inspected and things like that, as opposed to.
There is a program in the state that allows hunters to donate wild game, and there's a lot of hunters who do donate deer they get it processed and then donate it to programs like Feed Medina County. So I'm sure Medina County's getting it now.
Right, okay. All right, well, we'll get some more information on that, but it sounds like the majority of council is willing to call the herd if need be.
Where were you, John? Did you ever answer?
No.
Yeah, I'll call the herd.
Okay.
I understand it, because I don't want to call it an infestation, but once you get too many animals, of any type of animal, it creates problems, diseases, and all that sort of stuff.
Proliferation.
Proliferation. So,
So it's 5 to 2.
yes. I think it's necessary.
Hopefully we're the
There's no other ways to get rid of
I'll
them.
get back
I don't know
to
how
you.
you shoo them away. I mean, I don't want them to get sick and die too. I mean, that's even worse.
Right.
Have we seen that in the city?
I don't know. I've seen them on the side of the road by cars, and maybe that's another way to do it, but I'm sure the cost of that's prohibitive for the car driver.
Because they gotta pay their own deductible.
Yeah.
Deer's not paying anything.
So, but there's gonna be a point where there's gonna be that situation, just as anything else, when you get too many of them, they're not naturally selected through nature, that's what happens. There's no predators, they overtake everything, unfortunately. Okay, moving on. 13-186, expenditure of $15,000 for turf grass parks. Who's this one?
Can answer that. Thank you.
Neil? You?
This was the various overseeding, and Tim had the POs. as required, just for fertilizer, different materials that Parks uses amongst all the different parks, Uptown Park and so forth, and the expenditure has exceeded the border control amounts.
Okay.
Move to approve.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Number 8, 13187, amending ordinance 213, emergent tech expenditure for the police department. Chief?
Mr. Coyne, this is really a procedural thing. The law director felt that anything over 25,000 to a vendor should be aggregated. That had not been what was going on before. So purchases that were approved by Board of Control were going against that. They were over that 25. So there's a couple more pending, but essentially, we've estimated that the new dollar amount would cover all that was approved and spent in the past, and the 1 or 2 items that are outstanding that will come in before the end of the year.
Did it fall within your estimate of what it would cost to have emergent tech, or are you going over or under? Your estimated, when you did the system, did you think it was gonna cost me $73,000 for this year, or did you think it was gonna cost
No,
$50,000?
what we did was, we put in a request for council action for $45,000, $45,900. That was to put the system, that was this year's subscription fees. Okay. Since then, ProQA, which is the emergency medical dispatch, and which was approved to ProQA, was funded. The interface part of that connects it to CAD was an additional $10,000. The same with the mapping software. That all was paid to Emergitech, and that was above and beyond the initial subscription. So when you put all of those together, this year we have spent $58,011. We have $10,000, which went to Board of Control and was approved on really 2 separate dates. The latest one being 8/26, and the first one being 4/8/13. But when you put those 2 together,
Well, I guess my question is, are we
We're over- yeah.
spending more than we did on Spellman, on emergent tech, or are we
it's
saving
not
money?
even, my opinion, it's not even close.
Okay.
to
I
what
mean,
we've
because
done.
I guess my question is, what was budgeted, what do we plan on spending on emergent tech? Are we overspending on it? Is it something, are we spending more than we thought or less than we thought?
The 45.9 was not for everything they purchased.
Oh, no,
It
that's
was-
what I'm talking
so
about.
that's-
But he has a budget in his mind of what he was gonna spend on emergent tech, and I don't wanna come next year and say, oh, we gotta spend another $100,000 on emergent tech. I don't think would that happen? Would you come back and say?
Not under my.
This interface is a one-time fee, right? The
Yeah, well,
interface is a one-time fee.
You pay for the creation of the interface, and you pay, I think the interface cost was $1,500 a year for the maintenance for 5 years.
So it doesn't seem like that's gonna be a.
Right, this ProQA, for them to put it on their server, we bought the software package, but now it's gotta work with all the addresses and everything in Emergitech. So you had to write the software for them to work together. Same with the Bear Analytics. The Bear Analytics we got separately, bring it over, but it's gotta work with all the data within Emergitech. Well, to do that, they have to write the program to make those two see each other and work together. So those are both one-time expenditures that now we'll just pay a maintenance fee every year hereafter. So to answer your question, the numbers should go down for Emergitech.
Yeah, and I think you were paying, I'm gonna give you rough numbers, but you were paying over $40,000 a year just for maintenance under Spillman. And then you had all the associated costs of server and third-party vendors and all of that. I think, if I remember right, we estimated at about 70,000. But at that 70,000, we didn't have any of these capabilities. Just one thing like the property room module that tracks all the property, that was gonna be $60,000, just for that module. So, I mean, I'm real comfortable with where we're at on what we're spending for this. And like I said, as these different pieces got put together, we've built our system now. You know, we're where we wanna be. Now we're just in a yearly maintenance fee. And I've asked them, since this question came up, to do one invoice per year for everything, so you'd see it all at one time. Because some of this stuff, you know, I put in the original $45,000 request in 2012, but by the time it came through here, it came through Finance and Council, and Keith paid it, it was January of 2013. So, you know, we're gonna try to pull it all into 1 year, one document, and be done with it. And I estimate that's gonna fall somewhere around, what was it, Keith, 58 or 60,000, something like that.
Questions?
Move to approve.
Second. All in favor? All opposed, motion carries. The next item we have is 13188, the CHIP grant contract for 330 Cardinal Drive. Sandy?
That is the FY11 CHIP grant, which is winding down. We have to close everything out by December. And actually, we could still use one more private home rehabilitation project if anybody knows of anyone. It's for 330 Cardinal Drive, and the dollar amount, private home rehab can go up to $30,000. The dollar amount for this rehab prompted it to come to finance.
Sandy, just real quick again, if you said there's still enough for one more private rehab, and what are the qualifications?
They are the Section 8 HUD guidelines, 80% LMI guidelines that they have. And we've been very close, and we've had several applications, but in the time where they were just about approved income-wise, and then starting the project, they got a raise. Which is good for them, but it knocked them out of the program.
Okay.
Move to approve.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. 13189, CHIP grant contract for 612 Lafayette Road.
This is the same thing, 612 Lafayette is another private home rehab, and this is over the 31,000. Part of that, I believe, is we had to get permission from the state to go above the 30,000 limit, and we did get that, and this will go into council also.
Move to approve.
It says you're requesting an emergency clause?
Yes, because of the size of the project, these have to be closed out by December, meaning paid also.
So the former 1-2 Cardinal? Or
Same
just-
thing.
That's just a finance, so that'll need.
Oh, that's just a finance one, but this one is not, this is a
Right,
council.
right, because of the dollar amounts, the first one, Cardinal, was just finance.
Move to approve with the emergency clause.
Second, including emergency clause?
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries with the emergency clause. Next item we have is 13190, state bid for 2014 TerraStar SFA 4x4 streets. Nino.
Thank you, Mr. President. This request is for a replacement. Had a 1-ton in the city street department that was sold 2 years ago. This is A16. The guys kind of looked at it. I had Gary, the street superintendent, and Bill, the foreman, get together with Adam, and we kind of toss it around a replacement vehicle. This is an in-between, a 1-ton, a 5550, and a large plow truck. It's the TerraStar. I believe the chief in the fire department has the same international cab. The guys looked at it, have driven it. The cab is large and accommodating. This is a 4x4. The intent is to use it for plowing as well. excuse me, with the cul-de-sacs and to do see, get into some areas with the storm sewer cleanup, creek cleaning, things of that nature. So total price is $88,421.43. Cab chassis $61,194 with a total stainless steel bed of $27,227 as you see it split.
And this
Nino,
is- oops, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Nino, tell me again why you need a 4x4?
For plowing. This truck is
Well-
lighter, it's not as big as the,
I mean, couldn't you weigh down the dump and accomplish the same thing? And then
Could.
I'd ask the question, what's the difference in cost of 4x2 versus 4x4?
you know, really, I asked them that same thing, but then to get off-road and to get into back to some of the storm sewer issues with the creek cleaning, so Gary's saying
Gotta
it's
bring up
twofold.
creek cleaning, huh?
To do the,
Huh?
that's the honest answer that Gary gave me as well when I asked him that same question. Because we've had the 1-tons, they'll spin, depending on how thick the snow is, obviously in the cul-de-sacs, but the preference is for a 4x4.
John would ask me to 4x4 to do holiday lights.
Probably need that to snow.
Is this, those one-on-ones, it's not permanent four-wheel drive?
No.
Okay.
No, it is not.
And you know, we're okay, usually with the state bids, we're under the deadlines, but you're okay, you don't need the emergency clause?
No.
No. Okay.
Move to approve?
Second? Further discussion?
Hey, Nino, can you give me the numbers for the 4x2?
I can't remember.
Before the council.
Can do that. I might even have it in this 20-page spec, so I will do that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 1391, we have bids for Cloverdale storm sewer improvements. Mr. Patton?
Thank you. This is a project to correct, we've had some flooding issues on Cloverdale Avenue over the past several years, or many years. This project will replace storm sewers along the street, as well as a couple of storm sewer structures and head wall at the lake that it drains into.
Questions?
Mr. Athens called me this morning. I told him it was on the agenda. He's very thankful.
I talked to him.
Oh, did you?
Move to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 13192, cooperative agreement with Ryan Road Reconstruction. Mr. Patton?
Thank you. Earlier, council agreed to submit an application on Ohio Public Works Commission for a joint project with Medina County to reconstruct Ryan Road. As part of that application, the Public Works Commission required that we show proof of a cooperative agreement between the city and the county. The county has, the commissioners passed this resolution, I believe at last week's meeting. It's before you today, for acceptance.
Emergency clause.
Yep. Move to approve with the emergency clause?
Second, including emergency clause?
Any further discussion?
Yep. Pat, is this asphalt or concrete?
It will be concrete.
And is the recommendation, because a lot of the rest of Ryan Road south of the tracks is concrete, so we want to...
Correct. Yeah. It's the type of road that warrants a concrete pavement.
Any further discussion? All in favor with the emergency clause?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 13193, expenditure over $15,000 to Assure Vault. This came from council.
This is in addition to the scanning of all the old ordinances and things. This will allow us to, Darren, can you help me out? It's going to,
Yeah, what this is it's a hosted solution for taking all those documents that are being scanned and making them available via an internet connection, web browser. And because it's hosted, it doesn't sit on an application server here, and it allows not only internal to the city of Medina's network users that need to access this, the ability to do so, but it will also allow an external source. So if there's a resident that wants to look up an ordinance, he can do so right from his home computer. So it's really the difference of having these documents. It's how these documents are managed that are being scanned so people can see them. And what it provides is a database engine on the front end of where this hosted solution is, so that it does optical character recognition. So for searching all of these files, you know, someone can type in dog and you're gonna get everything that relates to dog that's been scanned with the ordinances.
How is this different than what's available on the city website now as far as searching ordinances?
You can't search ordinances on the city website right
You have to find it
now. I
by
mean,
the
you can
number.
read them all,
Yeah.
It's a
word by
flat
word,
file system.
but you can't search anything.
What's that, the link to Cranes then? I think that's the name.
Oh, that's the
That's
the
the codified ordinance.
Excuse me,
Codified, oh.
codified
Yeah.
ordinance to Walter Drain.
As opposed to
Okay.
each of the ordinances that we pass.
Got it, okay. Thank you.
Questions? So $1,500 a year to maintain this service to provide residents the ability to look at any ordinance that we pass.
Well, residents and internally too.
And internally.
Yeah, so if
I mean,
we're
right-
searching,
Right
you're
now, we're
looking
looking
for
at
something.
index cards and notes that Kathy made.
Yeah, and right
trying to
now,
find
the
them.
index that I have now, I can only search what I put in from the title, so is there, you know, if there's something in the body of it, and it depends on whose interpretation of it is that they put it in, you know, like I have Teresa enter all my indexes, so if she doesn't put the word that I would normally put in, I have to find that, you know, when I go to search for it, so.
And so to add to that, the quotes and what we had looked at was trying to come up with a number of allowing how many people, because it's license-based, could be in this kind of thing at one time. And we settled on 3, that we can increase, so that 3 people overall would be able to get into this at any one given time, it's concurrent licensing. Start there, and we can move from there if we need to.
I see at the top here, increased BO not to exceed 20,000, and it shows up
It's
front.
gonna be a lot less than,
What's that?
it's gonna be a lot less than,
I just get a little nervous seeing that up front it's a little over 7 plus an annual, about 1,500. Why it says
Yeah, I get a lot of carry forward every year, so, and this isn't gonna really, not even spend half of our carry forward, so I think it's a good investment, and I think actually it's gonna save money, you know, for the long run.
I mean, could we bring that down a little bit, say not to exceed 15 or 10, or does it have to say 20? I mean,
Well, the first one was about 8,000, I think, or 9,000. I don't have that one with me. And this is like 80.
85, 86.
So, I mean,
That's 16.
but it's hard for them to say, give me a solid number, because they just guesstimate when they do the estimate on the pages that they're scanning. So that may go up a little bit, because depending on how many pages, you know, they look at the books and they measure inches, you know, as to how many pages, but they really don't know until they get in there and actually start doing all the scanning. So that's why I was leaving room for.
Gotcha.
Any other questions?
Choose plus board.
Oh, yeah, they'll be more controlled.
And also, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
We didn't discuss that. In addition to the ordinance, it's all of the board control records too, because we have the same problem with that, just filed by date. So if you know somewhere in this year we passed something, you got to pull out every single meeting from by date and try to locate it. Now they can scan it, you can put in, if you're looking for this word or that revokable use permit or whatever, it'll pop up then everything that's got that.
You know, put in all of their
It'll be very
agendas
helpful.
and all the minutes from board control.
This goes in with the conversation you and I had about a year ago now, because there have been times where I wanted to see what we did in past council
Right.
meetings. This will allow us to do it right here.
When you mentioned that, we got right on it.
Yeah, right. That's why it took over a year to get here.
Government's slow.
Yeah, I know.
All right.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor? Motion carries. 15 is 13,194 net profits tax from Mountville Jet Agreement. I submitted this request in, let me give you a little factual background and then the discussion could occur. In 2011, we passed an ordinance, first of all, we passed a jet agreement which mirrors the income tax that the city of Medina has. And then in 2011, at the request, and this was a specific request of Drug Mart, that they were wondering why the net profit tax was in there. If we take the net profit tax out, maybe they'll join. We went through the JED board, we agreed to take out the net profit tax, council agreed to take it out, the trustees agreed to take it out. The main reason we took the net profit tax out at the time is because we had no other incentive by which to entice businesses to locate within the JED area. So we figured if we take that out, that'll give them a little something that, besides the maintenance fund, in which we give money, the JED board agrees on an amount of money to give a particular business owner to help them pay for infrastructure improvements, whether it be storm sewer or sidewalks or landscaping. So we did take this out in 2011. And then subsequent to 2011, as you all know, the Montville Township went through the process with the county to form a CRA, which mirrors the image, mirrors the products with the JED covers, the properties that the JED covers. And also, in their processes, if you want to join a CRA or take advantage of the CRA, which could be a reduction of property taxes on the improvements made to the property only for up to 50% for 15 years, and it could be all different kind of gyrations of that number. It could be 30% for 5 years, 50%, whatever. So, but you can go up to 50% for 15 years. It's up to the township to make that determination. Neither the JED board nor the city has the ability to dictate what the township would give on that regard. They could do what they would like to do. Drug Mart came back in and an application was submitted to the JED board at the time. We had discussions with Drug Mart was at the table with us, discussing what we wanted to do. The township made an indication that they would like the net profit tax back in if they're going to give a CRA adjustment. So we talked about that. There was a lot of discussion whether we should or shouldn't do it. The entire JED board, at least not with Drug Mart, but long-term, agreed that the net profit tax should go back in. But with the Drug Mart specifically, I think Tom Kruger was the only dissenting vote with respect to that. He didn't like the way the process went with Drug Mart. In fact, Kimberly was involved with Drug Mart, enticing them to come. She, of course, said that there's no net profit tax and there's a CRA involved, and you'll be able to get an abatement in your improvements on the property, which Drug Mart was indicated at the time of her involvement in enticing Drug Mart to join the JED and the CRA. At the meeting, it was discussed that I think 3 other members agreed that the net profit tax should go back in, but Drug Mart should get the full 15 years at 50%. There's no negotiation with respect to whether or not, that was our recommendation to the township trustees. The township trustees that evening voted to accept the application for the CRA with Drug Mart at 15 years at 50%, provided the net profit tax is put back into JED. So the question is whether or not the net profit tax should be put back into JED or not. At least for Drug Mart and going forward, the township trustees would like to see that happen. The JED board also voted, with Tom dissenting, to see that happen going forward, put the net profit tax in. So what does that mean? I know we all received an email from the mayor. He is opposed to adding the net profit tax back in. I did a couple little searches on the internet with respect to, site selecting, because that's what we're talking about here, is a business coming in and located in a particular location. There is, of course, the corporate tax rates, which this is a net profit tax, is involved. It's about midway down out of the top 10. It's number 6 here, but I've seen it. It's been from, I saw it from number 4 to number 6 as an important factor for a business when they're locating. Of course, highway accessibility is number 1 for most of them, which is location, labor costs, skilled labor, and other incentives that are offered. Usually round out the top 4, whether it be a CRA or otherwise. The discussion that we had with respect to the JED board, with respect to the net profit tax, you have to remember the net profit tax you only pay on profits. So individual companies, through their accounting mechanisms, can, of course, they take off depreciation expense, amortization costs to get to the net profits, of what the net income, net profits would be after deducting all that. So most businesses, at least for the depreciation schedule, which is 35 years, I think, or 39 years, I can't remember what it is, they're taking off the value of their improvements that they made to lower their net income or their net profits. But they're going to pay 1.25% of the net profits. I think my opinion would be, now that's all factual information. Now my opinion would be,
I'll still double check it, but keep going.
my opinion would be, if we have a net profit tax in the city, I think there should be a net profit tax in the JED. If we're willing to eliminate the net profit tax in the city, I would consider that to be fair. We have an income tax that the employees pay. The net profit tax is what the employer pays. Now, of course, the schools don't pay it, the hospitals don't pay it. If you're a nonprofit, you don't pay it. Right now, there's one entity in the JED that makes money or is for-profit, which is Montville Tire. They're the only one. Drug Mart will be the second one, But Knoxville Tire will not have to pay the net profit tax. We will exclude them because they are not receiving a CRA at all. So they're paying the full boat of it. Drug Mart, and also Knoxville Tire received $5,000 incentive. It was voted at the JED meeting that Drug Mart would receive $20,000 from the JED board to help offset the net profit tax going back in, and for the issues that they had with the negotiations because it changed, the board agreed to put $20,000 towards their improvements, whether it be sidewalks, landscaping, or what have you. So those are the facts, but the issue is whether or not you want to put the net profit tax back into the JED, so everybody that joins in the future would be required, companies would be required to pay a net profit tax on all the profits that they have, which is 1.25%. I think I covered everything on that.
The other thing I would add is that if the city does not pass that, then it does not go into JED. The fact that the Montville Township passed it.
That's correct. It would be.
In order to make the change, the city council has to agree. If you want to agree, it does not happen.
That's correct. It would not happen if we do not agree to put it back in. And I don't know what, Drug Mart would do whatever, because the table up for the township would be that, so Drug Mart may or may not come in, I don't know.
Well,
if
Drug
it-
Mart feels like they've been poked in the eye over this.
And they have. They have.
They had, but the representative was here and he indicated he's fine with it, from Drug Mart. The representative from Drug Mart said they're fine with it.
But they're fine with what?
Putting the net profit tax back in, we sat right there, we asked him the question, we were all equally unhappy, he said that he was okay with it, we said okay.
Well, let me lay this out for the council with facts that really happened.
I disagree with you, first of all, I gave the facts that happened. I hate to say it.
You weren't there in the first meeting, though.
I wasn't
Kimberly
invited. I wasn't
and
invited.
Jeff Brandon met with them. Jeff Brandon's representing Montville, and Kimberly's there, and they meet and they offer 50% for 15 years and no net profit tax to Drug Mart. Jeff goes back to the township trustees, and they start getting a bit greedy and decide, well, we don't know if we want to give 50% for 15 years. We don't know if we want to give up the net profit tax. We want it to be like the city. So then Kimberly and Jeff and I and Mary meet in my office, and Mary wants to keep saying it should be the same as the city. Well, it's not the same as the city. The only thing that's even close to the city is the income tax. They don't have our rules and regulations. They don't have our planning and zoning. They don't have our ordinances. They don't have anything that the city has. It's all under township rule, and the only thing that's different is the income tax. So what we have, one thing is a credibility issue, where we have our economic development director trying to sell the JED, and then after the fact, people wanted to pull the deal off the table and take a corporation that's got its world headquarters here in the city and just did a major expansion in the city, and treat them like this, which I don't think is fair. From a business model standpoint, we're trying to be, to attract businesses, not create obstacles for them to come in. And by requiring them to pay a net profit tax because they have to join the JED to get the CRA, they can get CRAs in both Granger shortly and in Sharon Center currently, and not have any of this nonsense to go through, and that's why I'm opposed.
Well, I agree. I looked at Sharon Township, their CRA. They have 3 CRAs, a zone 3, 4, and 5. 89, one started, nobody new joined since 89. There was 27 projects that joined in 89, there's 8 left. The CRA, there was 8 projects that joined in 1990 for CRA 4, which is Rural Park Industrial Area. There's still 5 active, so 3 dropped off. And there's a CRA 6 with the Port Center, Airport. There's 8 active projects in there. There may be more or not, but that was from 1999. So they have a CRA, right, but they're not going to attract businesses that we would attract, in that, again, the site selector shows location, work scale force, all this accessibility and things. I know we have a problem, number one, which is highway accessibility, but we're trying to work on that. But there's different factors that they consider, and the net profit tax is not one. Like I said, I would entertain to keep it fair that we eliminate the net profit tax from the city. If you guys want to talk about that, we could talk about that, but I don't know how much money we would lose if we did that.
It's about 10% of what, well, it's 5 to 10% of what we collect. It's a little more volatile than the other taxes, because as the economy speeds up and slows down, profits move before payroll moves. When things slow down,
So that'd be
pick up
about
in
5.
profits before you start.
So
laying
on
people off.
average,
On average, 5 to 10. I mean, you know, on average maybe
500,000 to $1 million?
$1 million, yeah, a little over. I mean, we bring in about 13, so on a high end, it's gonna be $1.25 million, $1.3 million. Low end, it's gonna be 500,000-600,000, something like that.
When this, when we voted on this to eliminate the net profit tax through the JED, I had reservations at that time, because yes, we want to make the JED a little more appealing, but also the city of Medina should be our priority number one. And I didn't feel comfortable on having it eliminated out in the township, but we still have it in the city. I mean, would you say that there's an advantage difference, you know, when companies are looking that one has it and one doesn't? I mean.
Well, there's one difference with the city. The city does have a CRA that is grandfathered in, which we could give 100% abatement on the improvements for up to 15 years. The township is prohibited from giving 100% abatement for 15 years. They only can give 50.
And I understand the mayor's concern about Drug Mart, who is an important employer in this community, but to me, I want to make sure that the city is still attractive and has something in place that has something in place that they still want to come into the city. I mean, I don't want them to go out in the township just because of not having a net profit tax, and I don't know if that's would be a situation or not, but like I said, to me, priority number one is what the city can do to make ourselves the most attractive. I mean,
I think John's exactly right with the 100% tax abatement that the city has because they're grandfathered in. It would be worth it for them to, if they had the choice, it doesn't matter if we're in the city or in the township, to get the 100% and pay the net profit than it would to be over there.
now,
and
what
get
about
50%?
What about the employers that are still within the city now? It's nothing, you know, not new additions or construction or anything like that. They have to pay the net profit tax.
Right. But they're also under all the other rules of the city, whereas in the township, the only thing they're under is the income tax. None of the other rules of the city apply out there. That's the difference I see with this. As well as it's a selling point for drawing the businesses away from some of the other townships, in my opinion.
I look at it, when we established the JUD, we had all this, on Worcester Pike or Route 3 South. Montville has all this commercial property that, if it's developed, is still going to be utilizing the city's services. We joined the JUD for a win-win situation, both for the township and for the city, and it has been. I don't know if you would call it greed or not, but I think it's going to benefit the city if people, businesses locate in the JUD district. We're going to benefit from it. So why would we do anything to compromise that? I mean, I mean, Drug Mart's a perfect example. They were going to change it. They already had acquired the property, but they were going to change their mind if the net profit was going to be in place.
Because there was no other advantage.
Right, and now they have advantage, I understand it, but why, I mean, unless we're looking at it as a greed, that we need to even get more profit from Montville Township.
No, I don't think it was agreed when the board discussed it. I think it was more, what I got is this long-term issue of fairness, that the city had it in there, the employees pay something, and then the employers will pay something. If you take the net profit tax out, the employers pay nothing.
But they still have the advantage, I mean, we're still making a profit of that JUD district if businesses locate there, so why wouldn't you want to do everything you can to entice? Because otherwise, if we wouldn't have had the JUD, we would have got zero, but they still, it's the more businesses come in, the more they're able to utilizing our services.
Like I say, the JED board wanted, you know, they thought it would be better back in, and the trustees did too. I mean, it's up to us to say, do we want it back in or not? Now, what I'm afraid of, if we just vote it down, I'm afraid of what that would do with the relationship with Montville Township. But we could deal with that if that happens.
What, John, when you're saying that the employer doesn't pay, you're talking about an absentee employer.
No, the employer a net profit tax, as I understand what Keith says, if you make a profit at that store location, You take all your expenses, all your, employees.
Right, I get all that, but if I'm there running my business and my employees are paying it, but I'm working there too, I'm gonna pay it just like they are.
I'm talking about the company, I'm not talking about the employee, because you're gonna be an employee there
Right,
too.
right.
I'm talking about employees pay and the company,
Right.
the entity that's making the widgets or whatever,
Right.
would pay, right, that's,
Okay.
yeah, if you work there, yeah, you'll pay
Yeah,
as an employee.
okay.
Mr. President, I've got a couple questions, because you're talking about Sharon Township or Granger, whichever one you're saying, and
Yes.
that we're not trying to track those businesses. Can you clarify that a little bit more?
Well, as you know, as the Economic Development Director, under site selection factors, corporate tax rate is not number one. It's a factor. The number one is always
I
accessibility,
got that part.
workforce.
The part that I didn't understand is you're saying you went through the CRAs and the different sections,
Yes.
that there's 5 under this one, 8
Right.
under this one. And you say, but we're not trying to attract those businesses.
Well, first of all, Drug Mart would never locate on Route 18 in the middle of Sharon Township. They want to locate near demographics and the population areas. Most businesses want to locate where there is a critical mass that would serve them. Now, the businesses that are located at the airport have other reasons of locating there, which we may have different businesses locate here. We may not be attracting the same ones. They may never want to locate near the city because they don't want to deal with the traffic issue. Maybe that's our problem, because our industrial park's located on the west side of town instead of the east side, which is a big factor of being able to get to highways quicker. They're in the middle because they can get to the highway in 71 or 77. But that is a factor to make a
But I
consideration.
disagree with you, because I know of a project right now that our JED is in competition with those other 2 townships. So they will be looking at that net profit tax in the big picture. So it is a competitive situation. I mean, you're right, you're absolutely right, there are other factors. But, in a county-wide, big picture retention project, that our JED could come into play on that Route 18 corridor, or maybe even the Route 3 corridor, and we're gonna be at a competitive disadvantage because
But we have other advantages. We have fiber optics that they may not have out there. We have all these things that
fiber optic, I don't
we
know that
try.
that is in the township. We have that in the city, but I
Yes.
don't know that it goes all the way out to the township.
Well, there's a big loop. I think it goes up to Brunswick. I don't know where.
There is a big loop, and it is in the city, and that is, to Mark's point, some of our competitive advantages that we have in the city that the township doesn't have. We also have a job creation grant that it's more for manufacturing and the healthcare industries, is not for retail. To Mr. Coyne's point, we do have that little bit of the maintenance fund that we can use to help offset some economic development costs, but there's not a lot of money in that. So there's only, what, $40,000?
Yeah, but we did offset it, and that the goal would be to people who wanted to join. The other care would be the JED, if there's a net profit tax, we'd give them some money. Like, we agreed to give $20,000 to Drug Mart to assist them in their capital costs, which is pretty good sum of money. And that's what the whole JED's about, is generating those maintenance funds to give an employer additional incentives that they would not otherwise have. And $20,000, I thought was pretty good. I mean, we gave Montville Tire 5. But again, they were in a different situation, a different number of employees that would be paying taxes, and that's what we.
The other thing too, I just wanted to point out that when you're saying that the company is not paying anything, and I disagree with that, because they're the ones that are making the investment in all the improvements. So that is their contribution, and that they're creating the jobs and bringing that amenity to the community. So
But
that
they're
thing
doing
about
it-
the net profit tax, you
But
gotta
remember-
give the full story, you only gave a portion.
But remember about businesses, why do businesses locate where they locate? There's a number one rule in real estate. The number one rule is location, location, location. If we had a 2% tax like most communities have, they would still locate there, because they want to be there where the action is, where they can make the most money. It's all about location. That's the first rule of real estate, and that's what brokers sell you on. I mean, it's location. So, you guys have a question you had?
No, we're just trying to discuss this issue.
Oh, well.
You've been going on for quite a
Go
while.
ahead, you got the floor. What's your point?
My point is very simply, I agree with the mayor. I mean, I don't, and Kimberly, I think that they've made a good argument, and I don't want to interfere with what they do, and I think that makes sense to me.
What about Montville Township? You're just gonna poke them in the eye?
No, I'm not gonna poke anybody in the eye. I don't use that kind of language, but I think I spent the morning, I think it's, saying what a great economic development group we had here, and the building inspector and the planning director, and how effective it's been. And if I hear them saying that this is not something they wanna do, I think we don't do it.
Brian, you got anything?
That's what we were chatting about.
Yeah, that's what we were chatting about.
Oh,
I don't think we should I don't think we should do it.
okay.
And all three, all three trustees voted
For it.
for it.
What was Tom Kruger's argument?
He just, for Drug Mart, he didn't like the way Drug Mart was handled, like the mayor indicated. They were presented one thing at the beginning, and then we changed it. But he did support putting it back in the long term.
But did he want Drug Mart to be exempt from it like Montville
He wanted Drug Mart to be exempt from it.
Montville Tire was?
Right. He wanted, but going forward, he wanted everybody to pay. We talked about that before the vote. And Kimberly, you can support me on this, you heard it. They all wanted it to go back in, but they didn't, Tom was the only one that didn't want Drug Mart to have it. That was the only difference.
On the JED board.
On the JED board, correct.
Well, there was one person missing, that was Alan Gribble, so there were only 4 of the Jet board members, 4 of the 5 there.
Yeah, of the 4 that were there.
So 3 voted yes, Tom voted no, and Alan Gribble was not there. And the other thing
For
too,
Drug
I don't think it's fair that you put Drug Mart on the spot at that meeting. I think you were saying, hey, is this fair? I mean, the guy hasn't even had a chance to go back and talk to his CFO, right? Because he's a liaison guy.
Yes, he is.
He's a messenger boy. He's not really the decision maker. And he's new to the company. He's only been there for a couple months. He was not the guy that I met with and Bethany met with when we went out to sell this thing and specifically said, hey, you asked for the no net profit tax, we took that out. At that time, Bethany and I were working on the CRA. That had not been approved by the state yet, so we could only talk in general terms about if this gets approved, what we may be able to offer to them. And then eventually that went through the state. We made that a requirement that if a company wanted that benefit, that they had to join the JED. And so through a series of meetings and these incentive discussions, that's how we were able to get them to be interested in joining. And so now to go back and say, oh, by the way, we changed our mind, now we want you to pay the net profit tax,
Right.
is wrong.
Understand. For that particular situation, you may be right, I disagree with you, but going on, I think we have to remember too, the JED was set up, and the JED really benefits us. And I know that Kimberly put some time marketing, but that's all we put into it, is her marketing time. We as a city don't put anything else into the JED, and we received $80,000 so far, which I think is pretty good. I mean.
But if we wouldn't have put in the marketing time, Montville would be getting 0.
Montville still has to do all the permitting, he has to do
I-
all the.
I understand
They have to
that.
do all that stuff, all the police force, the fire, even though we have cooperative agreement, they have to do all that. We don't have to provide any service
I understand.
to
that,
anybody in
but
the JED. We
if
provide
we
0
wouldn't have
service.
been interested, because it's in our best interest also, I felt. I mean, like I said, eventually, we know that all that commercial property is going to, when the economy turns around, it's gonna be invested.
And they're gonna come there because of the location. That's gonna be filled up. I don't know why they
So,
would.
I look at it by us agreeing to help, I looked at it this way, helping Montville to be able to collect some taxes for that area. It's helping us because all those people are gonna be using our services, so this is gonna be a way to help supplement the cost of the increase in the
But-
services we provide.
But if you recall, when we really originally passed the JED, we didn't talk about taking out the net profit tax. The only reason we took out the net profit tax was because Drug Mart asked. Other than that, it would still be in there today. We wouldn't even be talking about this today. That's the only reason. If it was so important, why didn't we take it out at the beginning?
Because nobody had asked yet, and it was new to all of us.
Yeah, I didn't.
And it was new to all of us. Right.
But I hate to do this to Drug Mart, so I'm okay with, that we do not add it back in.
But this is for the future too, it's not just.
I know, but maybe, we're probably due to have our joint meeting with Montville Township. Couldn't we talk about this with the trustees?
I think they need an answer now because Drug Mart is waiting. And so if we vote no, they're gonna go back to the table again and it'll probably change.
Well, if we vote no, Drug Mart's still not gonna have the net profit tax. Either way, they're not gonna have the net profit tax.
No, they would have the net profit tax. If we voted yes now, Drug Mart would have to pay the net profit tax.
I thought that they were gonna exclude them.
No, Drug Mart is not.
It's only Montville Tire
Tire is
Express is the
excluded.
only.
Oh,
one.
Montville Tire, okay.
Montville Tire.
But if we vote no,
John, didn't the idea for putting this back in come from Mary?
We talked about it, she brought it up, I agree with her 100%. I think we should be fair, we should be equal. The city has it in their income tax, Montville should have it in their income tax. If we want to take it out of the city's income tax, I will put a request in, we could talk about taking a net profit tax out of our income tax. It may be tougher on the, the department heads and budgeting, because we gotta cut somebody, but we could do that. I don't know why we don't want to be equal.
Well, and that's what I'm fighting with, is because I think, even though the city has additional tools in their belt, I still want us to be, I mean, we're the one that has a industrial area on the wrong side of town. Whatever it takes for us to be a little more competitive than the JED, I want that. And to me, if we have this in our regulations right now, why wouldn't the township? That's the way I look at it. And it's to what you said, if we're not gonna make it in the JED, why wouldn't we do it in the city from, our employers here?
Competitive, right, because that'd be a benefit
I
to the
mean,
employer.
they already have the competitive edge of being near.
Maybe they'd stay. If we take it out, they won't think about moving, because we had a lot of companies move.
I'm just trying to, what's fair for the city and businesses within the city? To me, allowing JED not to have it and we have it, even though we do have additional tools, but that still gives us an edge on a tough situation because of our location and where our industrial area is, so.
Corporations, and well, depending on the size of the companies, they spend a lot of money on tax planning and tax avoidance and things like that. So to wish this up to 10% away, according with using Keith's numbers, I don't know, I've got a problem. Maybe we should visit taking away the net profit tax for the city to make things even. If that's Montville's main goal, is to be fair to the city, or even with the city. To put it back in right now, we're looking at, for this 10% money, we're looking at a potential of losing 90% of our income of what could be out there coming in. All right, using Keith's numbers, 10% corporate profit tax, 90% regular income tax. If somebody is looking at the taxes and they have the CRA out in Sharon Township, a couple of miles here, a couple of miles there, that's, like you say, location. And if it's coming down to, well, let's see, I'm gonna keep more of my profits because I'm not paying as much taxes, I'm going out to Sharon, we've lost the 90%.
Well, you just told you how much profits we receive.
Right, but, right, that's the 10%.
Up to
10%, that's right. But we're, the other 90%, or we're losing 100% of the income tax on the employees, is what we're losing.
Understood, but I'm very
Okay.
concerned if we vote this down, I think our relationship with Montville will be a little tired.
Well, and that's my other, I mean, the
No.
trustees
I think we're going forward, collaboration is gonna be a little bit more difficult.
What do you think our relationship will be like with Drug Mart?
I think Drug Mart's fine. I asked the guy right there, he said, I appreciate what you did, it's fair, I understand it, I have no problems with it. That's what he said at the table.
And we're
I just
talking,
can't figure out why we took it out based on their ask.
Well, I do
Now,
remember a little bit about the discussion and what you said, when we did take it out, it's gonna be a tool for enticing businesses to come.
Yes, exactly
Mhm.
correct.
So that's, and I think.
Because we had
as
no
a
other
majority of
tools,
us-
we had no other tools in the toolbox. That was the only tool we had. We
But
had
if it
one.
was enticing for them to come then, why wouldn't it be enticing for them to come now, that tax?
Why are we throwing the tool out?
Because I think we should level the playing field. I agree
It's
with
not
Paul.
level, it's not level with the income tax. John,
Maybe,
you keep saying
then we should
that,
take
and
it
that's a
out.
miss-
I think maybe we should take
No.
ours out. I'll put a
No, I
request
don't
in,
think
Kathy,
so.
put a
We
request
have-
in for taking out the net profit tax for the city of Medina. We gotta talk about that. Paul, I think, is making a good
I
point.
think
We should
the
maybe take it out.
conversation should be had, yes.
Yes.
Just to look at all the numbers and see if it is financially feasible for us.
Well, no,
Okay.
because you're looking at $500,000 to $1 million, so
But it's feasible.
I'm not willing to.
We're gonna take our net profit tax out for the city because of the JED.
Because of what Montville wants to do.
No,
I don't know why
because
Montville
it's
thinks
fair.
we're going here.
because again, this is, we think it's our JED.
All of a sudden,
We think it's the
JED
Big Bad
dictates
City's
what we're
JED.
doing. No, it's our
Montville's
JED.
JED, it's a cooperation, they're doing all the services, they're providing everything. All we're doing is charging an income tax and taking $80,000 from them, and Kimberly's doing some marketing. That's what we're doing. If we want to have Kimberly stop marketing, we'll still get the money in. But it's not our JED,
It's our-
Montville's JED.
Our JED with Montville, because Montville wouldn't have a JED without the city.
That's right.
Okay.
So is
it's-
Lafayette's the same question.
It's ours together.
So in Lafayette, we'll have the same question. Do we want a net profit tax in Lafayette, or don't we?
Well, if their trustees want it, why would we go against their wish?
Because I think it's gonna be harder to market it for the businesses for the reasons that I gave you. You guys can disagree with that, I'm just telling you where we're at with it.
And I'm the
That's
one
what
who disagrees with that.
I just don't understand
I
why.
don't think that's the case.
Then why did we
The
vote on
other-
it?
The other thing is, we keep saying it's to be equal, but it's not equal. The city provides a lot more services and a lot more things to the residents that are not available in the townships. So that's not equal. What we're talking about is making just the income tax equal. Nothing else is equal. If we're saying let's make the income tax equal with the net profits, that'd be a fair statement. But by saying it'll be equal with the city, it's not. We have much more regulations and requirements and laws and ordinances that the township people don't have to follow at all. All they have to follow is a revised code.
Are we gonna vote on this tonight?
Yeah, we'll vote. Anybody else have any comments?
Nope.
I'm having a problem. I understand what you're saying, and I don't want to tarnish a relationship with Montville Township. That's not my goal. But I have to go back, when we took the net profit tax out,
It was to entice.
it was to help
Yes.
Montville, and in return,
Help us.
help us.
Right.
And we all agreed on it. That makes sense. Yeah, right now, if we didn't have the JED, we'd be getting zero from that property out there, and Montville would be getting zero.
Right.
So now that we wanted to entice businesses, we took that out. And it could have been that Drug Mart was the one that we wanted to entice. But we wanted to entice businesses, so we removed that. And I'm nothing against Montville, I mean, we always look for a way to increase revenue any way we can, but right now, the trustees are looking, Drug Mart's come in, and we could make a lot more money if they had that net profit in there, so.
I don't think it's a lot more money.
But we're talking one store.
But I mean, if we agreed to it a year ago to remove it because we wanted to increase the enticement for businesses to
Well,
come
what
in.
John's saying, something with the CRA has come into play, so now they have something else.
So now we have two enticements instead of one, and we want to give one back. I don't know why.
Yeah, I mean,
Because the
I'm
JED
hard
board
to-
wants to give it back, and the trustees want to give it back. There's two parties to this three-party game that want to give it back.
So
And we have a tax profit in the city of Medina.
we do.
Net profit tax.
So,
Right.
a net profit tax in the city of Medina. So to me, even though it's still not even, I still think that it still gives Medina City an advantage, even if we both have it. We need everything we can, myself. I work over in the industrial area. I see vacant properties, and, we still have other areas that are vacant. Yes, we want to work with the township, but, we still got to remember what's within our borders. And again, I'm going back to the trustees want it, that represent that area as well. Why wouldn't we, we're trying to get back to a somewhat level playing field, so we're still attractive as well, but the trustees that represent that area, why wouldn't we go with their wishes? And a board that's reviewed it. That's where
I guess because the mayor thinks it's a bad idea, and I think he has, he's justified what he said. It's pretty, he made a really clear argument, and I think Kimberly made a really clear argument, and they're on the front line with these businesses trying to entice these folks to come in. And
But did you hear, you're just arguing against what Mark just said. Entice the businesses to come in where, in the city or in the township? What do you want to entice?
We
them to
need
do?
help
Well,
here.
I think Mark's talking about something different. We're not gonna get a drug mart store to open up in the industrial area.
No, I'm just saying
Or
in general.
McDonald's or
In
anything
general.
else. So industry, we're gonna push our industrial area. They don't have an industrial area.
It's not just
Well, if you take your
commercial.
argument-
But a net
It's not
profit
just-
tax
it's
is not
not
gonna
just
prohibit a
industrial
McDonald's from
I'm
coming
talking
in.
about.
Not gonna prohibit from Walmart
They're
coming
not
in.
talking-
They're
So
gonna come
they've
in
got
no
more
matter if it's a
commercial
tax.
area available that
Walmart.
we don't.
Yeah, that's
We've
what's
got
gonna
more
go down
industrial
there.
area that
They're
they
coming in
don't,
no
so we
matter what.
support one another.
Mark, if you take your argument to its logical conclusion, we never should have entered into this JED.
Well, you know, we did it to be good neighbors and try to help them
We did it
gain
to make
revenue to
money.
pay, what's that?
We did it to make money. I mean, basically, it was a way that we could help Montville out, and we're gonna lose a thing.
Well, I mean,
In
that's
the
what I
agreement, we're
voted
gonna
for.
make money, and we have.
But I mean, it was, to
I
me,
mean,
it was.
if it would have been something that we were gonna have to invest in besides John's time,
Well, and.
and
Kimberly's
Kimberly's, the
invest-
mayor's,
My bill's in the mail.
yeah, I mean, if it would have been more than that, we probably would have had a longer discussion about it, but it was a win-win situation for the city, and a win-win situation for Montville.
Can we call for the vote?
Well, yes, we can. If you want to call the question, we can call the question. Okay, so all in favor of putting the net profit tax back into the JED agreement signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Call Montville Township and tell them. I don't want to make that call.
I've got 2 to 5.
Yeah, do
Ah.
Yes,
Yes,
that's true, we did not make a motion.
We didn't have a motion or a
Oh,
second.
I'm sorry, make the motion, we'll vote again.
Before we make the motion, can at least the mayor and some of us have a meeting with the township trustees and say, you know, why? Why? I mean, what is the reasoning behind it? I don't understand why.
Because they believe it levels the playing field.
But it doesn't. It doesn't. I have to agree with the mayor. It does not level the
And it
playing
provides
field.
the same income tax that we have in the city, they have in the JED.
But that wasn't what we were guaranteeing them when we decided to form the JED. We weren't guaranteeing them, hey, you're gonna be the exactly same
Yes,
as the
we
city.
did. In the first agreement, we did. Yes.
Then you made an awful good argument about removing it then. because
Pretty good at that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go back in.
All right, I'll make a motion. I'm gonna
But Kathy, you call it, I'm not calling.
I'm gonna make the motion that the request for council action was to put the net profit tax back in to the JED.
Second.
That's my motion.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Motion fails. Okay, now we move on. Next item on the agenda is 13-195, payment of greater than $3,000 for engineering.
This is another one of these, we've had a couple of them before, we're paying an amount over 3,000. There wasn't a purchase order, but the funds were available, so it has to go to council.
Move to approve with the emergency clause.
Second, including emergency clause?
All in favor with the
Aye.
emergency clause? All opposed? Motion carries. 13-186, Parks and Recreation Center Director salary. This is Mayor?
Yes, sir. Put this before council. We don't have a Parks Director and our Rec Director is not here, so this is probably as good a time as any to talk about it. Right now, the Rec Director is at grade 112, the Parks Director was at 113. My concern is that with that differentiation in pay, the lowest pay under the current Parks Director is 13,000 higher than the lowest pay of the other. So there's not much discretion there. When I look at those two positions, the Rec Director has a great deal of the public coming in and day out, a great deal of staff as well as contractual employees. And if we made both, whereas the Parks Director has a lot of things going on during the summertime, seasonals and the youth sports and all those other things that go along with it. But then there's also more of an idle or downtime through the winter months. In my mind, by putting them both in the same pay grade, if we had somebody that had the experience, background, knowledge that we wanted to bump up, by pushing them to the top of the same pay scale, we could get to the beginning of where our Parks Director was, but I lose that discretion by leaving it at the 113 that it is now. I have no choice, but the lowest I can start him is 13,000 higher than the rec director. So I was just asking for your consideration, discussion on it.
Discussion?
I did call the mayor today on this one to have this discussion with him, because I was part of the process when we had a rec center, when we went through the hiring of the rec center director, and then also moving Tim into the parks director position. And at that time, we felt that the parks director still had more responsibility, because he was responsible for all the acres of the park, our facilities, anywhere from the football field to the baseball fields, the soccer fields, splash pads, and then a huge responsibility with our sports organizations, which was a very, very tough job, we felt like, whereas the rec center was one facility. So that's, I know, at least the discussion, I wanted to share that with everybody history-wise, why we distinguished the two positions and felt like the parks director had a little bit more.
So do you think we should make them equal, or still have a little discrepancy with the parks director, have a little bit more money?
I really still do feel that the parks director has more responsibility in their job than the rec center director.
So what are you suggesting, that we don't keep it the same? We
No,
get-
I just wanted everybody to know that. I mean, the mayor and I talked for quite a while today about it, just because I wanted him to know what we went through the process when, under the former mayor, when we talked about these two positions. And I understand where the mayor wants to have the range, and it doesn't mean that, I'm okay. I understand where the mayor's coming from, but I still feel that there's more responsibility to that parks.
Well, do you think the bottom range should be 60,000 with the?
Well, I don't know that there's much we can do about that, because the grades are you're only changing one grade, and those are the ranges then. So we can't change
It's
the
the
range.
next lowest grade.
Yeah, it's the next lowest. You have no other choice. And I understood that when we
Well,
talked.
you can
This
set a
gives him
salary
a little.
range, can't we set a salary range anything we want, though? I mean, why do we have to follow the grade? I mean, can't we
Well,
just,
you could pick another grade. If you pick a lower one, it's less. If you pick a higher one, it's more.
I mean, but why do we have to follow the grade with the salary ranges? How come we just can't say we want the salary to be 75,000?
Because when we update this, we try to avoid having, we've had those before. and
But
you
we
have
can't
done
do
that
that.
before.
We can't do that.
But then when you go to
Usually it's
update
within
it,
the
it's
grade.
not part of the code. I would prefer, if you want to create a new one and say it's this amount, I would prefer that you say, this is, make up a new grade, and then put that grade, indicate it to that grade, so that when you update the salary schedule, you only have to update one thing. If you start putting dollars in the pay code, then you gotta go through the whole pay code to do any update and change all these individual things. So it's much easier to keep up with and update to just say, here's the schedule, here's what we're doing.
What do they think?
And I guess to change on when you were thinking about, we changed the range, there's other people who are in pay grade 113 right now.
I got you.
So you just can't change that without affecting. It's
Right.
not just looking at the rec center or the parks director.
Thoughts?
Jim, you have a whole lot more history than I do in this. Where do you think the Parks Director's salary fits in this range of 112, low end of 112 to the high end of 113?
Well, I guess at the time when we looked at this, then we didn't make it equal, so we went to the next pay range because we felt there was more responsibility. And then again, based on who you hire and what their level of experience is, you either come in at the low end at 72 or, up to 87. I know when the mayor and I talked today, I do understand where he's saying is like, well, now what if we find somebody that doesn't have quite as much experience? Going down to this lower pay range gives more of that starting salary where, I get that.
Or vice versa, just so everybody's aware, I mean, what we had before, Tim was at the beginning of 113, so he's at 72,897, and Mike's at the beginning of 112, 67,43. So depending on who this person that comes in at whatever experience, if we're at 113, my starting point is where Tim was.
That's exactly where Tim's at.
Yeah. Whereas if we drop it to the lower grade, I can get up to where Tim was, or pick something between where Mike or Tim was, or come down to where Mike is. That gives me a little bit more flexibility and discretion, with all due respect, and I appreciate Jim's historical perspective of it.
What if we would create a, Parks Director 1, Parks Director 2 type thing, wherein in, based on their experience coming in, you have that luxury of picking 112 or 113.
Well, I think we could do the same thing, I mean, for argument's sake, hypothetically. We could change it if council was willing to 112, if we get somebody that's doing an outstanding job, or our parks duties begin to swell, we put a water park in, and now he's responsible for some additional things, then I would still have the right to come back to council and say, we'd like to bump it back to the 113, and you'd still have the oversight of that. You'd have to change the pay grade anyway, even if it was a Parks Director 1 versus a Parks Director 2. So in essence, we could still accomplish what you're talking about without really recreating it. You could start it at one place now and bring it back to you to revisit in the future if we get to there.
I'm fine with the mayor's recommendation to reduce it.
I'm always glad to reduce.
I knew that would be your answer.
But you do have the latitude to start that person at the high end.
I do. I do.
I guess I just ask you to think about, you guys see it as the same pay grade?
No.
Those two positions?
No.
So, and that's where we came up with why it was two different pay grades.
Yeah, I think that the Parks Director should get paid more than the Rec Center Director, because the Rec Center's a building. The Parks is 1,200 acres of land.
But Parks does not
Yeah,
oversee the
but
rec center.
I mean,
Correct.
That's right.
certain functions within that park that the Parks Director really doesn't do much with. I mean, you can say 1,200 acres, but there's facilities within the parks that they have to handle, that even though Mike's in a building, there's a lot going on in that building. So, I mean, if you really want to break down responsibilities, I mean, for a portion of the year, the Parks Director only has a handful under him until the seasonals come back in, and then he's got a bigger umbrella to deal with, but, I mean, like I said, I'm fine with the mayor's.
Do we have an idea what other similar-sized cities pay their rec directors? Or their park
I have a
directors?
survey upstairs that I looked at, and I looked at that before I made this recommendation, but I didn't memorize it to tell you exactly what it is. This seemed to be in line with what the survey showed. And I'm fine with too, if, you know, council tells me that, look, we, even if we reduce it, that we think it should be at least above what the rec director is, then I can just pick something in the middle, and I'm not gonna go against what your wishes are, I'm just trying to.
I'm all for less also, but I do think should be a higher paid position than the rec center. But I understand where the mayor's coming from.
Yeah, I do too, I'm torn both ways. I just know we had this conversation, and I do feel I'm gonna vote no, because I guess I feel like it needs to be a different pay grade.
Well, he also said that, he could bring somebody in higher than what the rec center director is making
Yes, I
now.
guess-
And then make a change down the road if we feel that he needs to go back up to 113.
That's why I clarified that you have latitude to change, to start at the higher end of the pay grade.
Yeah, I have the latitude, anything with pay grade 112, anywhere between those two numbers, from the lowest to the highest. So in essence, I could start them right where Tim left, if it was somebody that had the experience and job knowledge and expertise that I felt we weren't gonna miss beat. If it was something in between, and again, this discussion is helpful, that was the purpose of submitting this, is if you guys tell me that, look, we want it to be above where Mike is, then I can pick something in between where Tim was and where Mike is, and accomplish your wishes.
But if you do start somebody at the high end of 112.
Then they get the cost of livings thereafter.
Okay.
Unless I come back to council and say, look, you know, with everything going on, you know, we need to revisit this, and
We
again,
raise
that
it
would be
then.
your
I just wanna make
discretion.
sure
Change
it's
the pay
stuck
grade.
that way.
Yeah, it's ultimately council's discretion.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with
Move to approve with the emergency clause?
Second, including the emergency clause?
that. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. And that's it, we don't have time for the executive session, we'll have to do that after council. Meeting adjourned.